This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. Now, you may have noticed that the bumper music leading us in here was very hopeful, pleasant, and powerful. That's because normally while Stephen Kent and I over from our great Watchin segment that's kind of been on hiatus, you've been gallivanting around, traveling, being on Fox News and all kinds of stuff. The tone of culture has changed, Stephen. It's totally different, man. It's hopeful.
Millennial cynicism is not cool anymore, Tony. We are past sort of peak bleak attitudes about culture, about life, about marriage, about love. There's actually something going on with kids these days that is uniquely positive. Every generation has problems, but I happen to be raising a 14-year-old girl, and I see this day to day in my life. It started as like the prairie wear revival and sort of this, this fashion choice among Gen Zers and older Gen A kids to sort of dress like we're in the prairie days, but also to content online and consumption of positive, motivational, inspiring content called #HopeCore on YouTube.
So allow me to explain HopeCore for those of us in the audience who aren't terminally online. HopeCore is when you add this particular track, which is called Flawed Mangoes, or it's by the group Flawed Mangoes. It's called Dramamine, which is really funny. And it just starts playing this really hopeful music, and you start seeing all of these flowers blooming and mountains with the sun cresting over them, water flowing, and it's supposed to invoke these feelings of hope. And people have started adding really stupid speeches.
Talking about the significance of the passage of time.
Because I'm not a Latino at the Home Depot.
And nonsense to it. And I got to tell you, it's, again, we used to meme sadness and depression and cynicism, and we're all going to die. Now the theme that society apparently appears to be going all in on is hopefulness.
Well, this is what made Ted Lasso such a momentary success. There are not many instances, Tony, when pop culture, it seems like everybody's watching the same thing and talking about the same thing. But Ted Lasso was one of those moments on Apple TV. And this, show starring Jason Sudeikis is all about an American football coach coaching a soccer team in the UK. And he is just painfully Southern and wholesome, and he believes, and he gets his entire team, who are all a bunch of egotistical, cynical jerks, to believe in one another. He has a sign up on the wall that just says, believe, dream, hope. And this actually became a social media phenomenon, particularly on TikTok, with his motivational speeches, his encouraging of people. Again, I think it's because young people, again, my daughter's age, 14, they do not want what my generation had and what the well that we drank from, which was the world is horrible, everything is ironic, make fun of classical virtues and anything wholesome. They actually want a slice of that. I see it every single day. Ted Lasso was one of the early indications of that.
We have stumbled onto one of those segments that is just accidentally really good. I'm sorry. There's just something about, because you hit on a really good point. We didn't just have kind of a gloom outlook and pseudo-depressive view of things. We made that our identity. Again, the height of the punk rock phase turned into this cynical, everyone's going to die, wake me up when it's all over. There's no joy, all around
it's
me
wake
are
me up.
familiar
Wake me up
faces.
inside. I can't wake up. Wake me up.
Are you? There will be no quoting of Evanescence on this at all, and I already know you're going to put that into the stream.
We are only an Evanescence commentary show when two millennial men get together to discuss culture from the early 2000s. It's not a joke, Tony. This is not a joke. But no, if I could, you mentioned punk rock, and this has to do with the most recent Superman movie from DC. Now, first of all, I do not like James Gunn's new Superman movie. I don't think that it is overall good.
Producer Nick's mouth is currently in the shape of everyone's favorite capital vowel.
Oh, well, that's sad. But overall, this movie had one good thing going for it, which was a bit of dialogue in that movie where Superman is challenging Lois Lane on her cynicism, her belief that heroism and goodness and that people are worth fighting for, because she's a cynical journalist and she embodies that millennial snarky attitude that sort of was really born out of like the Gilmore Girls on television and really has crystallized in pretty much the entire Democratic Party of today. But that people are good, and that overall human beings will always be worth putting yourself on the line for. And Lois Lane doesn't get it. And Superman says to her, perhaps that's the real punk rock, like believing in people. He says that that's punk rock, and it's true. That is happening right now.
The Lego movie at the end, where, Morgan Freeman goes, I know it sounds like a cat poster, but it's true. And then there's this cat poster on the wall, and he believes in himself again. And, there was that element of it that was kind of the last breath of the cynicism that came through from all of us in our movie making phase, where now it's gone ironically for so long that Generation Z and I Alpha behind it are unironically going, you know what? I don't actually want to be depressed about anything. These, actually, there's another meme that we're going to talk about, where there's like somebody looking really sad and gloomy, and then it cuts as the opposite to Ryan Gosling walking around, and it's like bright sunshine, and it's that like, da, 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 da.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is one of the things that conservative commentators, with the exception of Michael Knowles, got wrong about Ryan Gosling's Barbie movie. The Barbie movie was in this genre of kind of wholesome, positive attitudes. Why? Because the girl in the movie who represented the ugly, cynical Barbie, pretty blonde women are fascist Nazis was the kind of ugly teenager in the movie who monologues to Barbie and makes her cry about how Barbie is everything wrong with the world.
That's actually what I'm talking about here.
Exactly. And what people missed was that girl is not supposed to be treated as the truth teller. She is proved wrong by the end of the film. And Barbie puts itself into that category of actually the things that Barbie represents for girls are pretty good on net. And this sad, angry teenager is what you need to reject.
And now there are a couple of variations of this meme that are a little less than politically correct, but it actually has, the first part, it's Margot Robbie and she's crying and she's sad. And then the converse of it is Ryan Gosling strolling around, and like there's this Katy Perry song that's just blaring and everyone's having a good time. And there is this idea that after the left preached, you need to be depressive, you need to be minimal, not just like minimalistic in your design, although I think that definitely came through in it, but this idea, you need to not have any children, and you need to be sad because we're all going to die, you've stolen our dreams.
How dare you.
And all of our movies were sad. We were going to die from everything, the net neutrality, we were going to die because of Trump, this and that. And none of it happened, and instead people have countered with, I'm going to be ridiculously optimistic. And I think it's coincided as well with the revisiting of faith in the country, where like the general march of Christianity is incredibly optimistic. And from that, you end up running into purpose, which gives joy instead of just momentary happiness.
I'm working on my second book right now, Tony. You're the first person to hear about this. And in the book, it has a chapter dedicated to George Lucas and the birth of Star Wars in 1977. And George Lucas had this exact view about the culture coming out of the turmoil and ugliness and civil unrest of the 1960s and the cynicism and atheistic energy of the early 70s. He believed that America was at a turning point of peak cynical exhaustion, and that Star Wars needed to be this painfully cheesy, hopeful tale about traditional virtue and heroism and give people hope. And that was actually countercultural. Everybody around him, producers John Milius and Steven Spielberg, were like even cautioning him at that time that he needed to hedge a little bit of, quote, realism into the movie. But he didn't want realism. He thought that the market was demanding something else. And he was right. That is why he chose not to direct the movie Apocalypse Now. That was actually supposed to be his movie, but he backed away from it in the final stages of pre-production because he didn't want to tell another Vietnam bad story. Like that just was no longer interesting to him. And at some point, America is going to have to grow out of 9/11 and the war on terror made us the bad guys. That has been the culture for 20 years, and we're coming out of it now.
Okay, I'm so I don't mean to be the influencery, over dramatic, oh, he just said something, I'm going to make a really big point about it. The camera zooms in, oh, the glasses are off. Wow, but that's really profound, and here's why. In The Empire of Dreams, one of the best documentaries I've ever enjoyed, it is the tale of how Star Wars came to be. Hollywood was at its most cynical point. The Vietnam War had left America demoralized, depressed, angry with ourselves. And there was this idea that any other war, remember, when the Gulf War occurred, the first Gulf War, then we saw an entire series of protests that thought this was going to turn into another Nam. Didn't happen. Instead, America steamrolled, bent Saddam Hussein over their knee and spanked him in front of the global stage in a matter of hours and weeks. And so to see Star Wars be one of the integral parts that turned the tide of culture towards optimism, again, so much so that Reagan was endorsing Star Wars as the Strategic Missile Defense Initiative.
Yes.
I mean, I can't think of a better way to describe where we are now coming out of the Iraq, Afghanistan.
Let me give you a quote, Tony. This is from George Lucas in 1977. We also know, as every movie made in the last 10 years has pointed out, how terrible we are, how we have ruined the world, and what schmucks we are, and how rotten everything is. And I said, we need something more positive. That is how Star Wars took over the world. And you could say the exact same thing about where we are. Now, Star Wars as a cultural property is at a cultural low, really. It's lost a lot of its relevance because of the cynicism of the past 10 to 15 years. But something else must be on the horizon. We are not going to live in this dark, cynical period forever. There is a story being written by somebody out in your audience somewhere that could actually help turn things around. And there is a market for it. I really believe that.
I think that you're correct. And what an interesting place to end here, where you're looking at Fantastic Four being really positive and family oriented. The general themes of the Superman movie, not casting America as just the evil boogity boo of all time, but instead, again, looking at returning some themes, dare I use the cultural word that is too overused in any discussion about society, right? It really is a good thing to see a return from the age of gritty realism that, though I really enjoyed seeing it in the Christopher Nolan Batman movies.
Everything has to be relevant.
Yeah. I mean, no one bats an eye. I mean, you can actually make the case that, that had its time in the sun with its green filter and its yellow urine filter over the screen so that everything looked depressing. Occasionally we'd go to Mexico and the filter would be brown. Yeah, exactly. The music would kick in. But I'll say this, at the end of the day, coming out of that into a new age of optimism, we're so back. And it is good, in fact, to be back. And even if it bleeds, it leads isn't the theme of this particular segment or the show in general, I'm glad you're here back with us for What You Watchin', man. Hopefully we'll start bringing this back a little more often.
Good to see you, Tony.
Thanks for tuning in with us this evening. We'll see you real soon. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.